Good morning and welcome to the joint meeting of the Assembly Committee on Ways and Means and Senate Committee on Finance. Committee Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Senators Buck, Canizaro, Dondero Loop, Nguyen, Scheibel, Stone, Taylor, Titus, Assembly members Anderson, Backus, Brown May, Dickman, Hafen, Hibbets, Haudegi, Koenig, Mosca, O'Neill, Torres Fawcett, Watts, Yeager, and Chair Monroe Moreno.
And I am here. Members, happy Friday. We will have presentations today from the Governor's Office of Finance, and we will have an public comment at the end of today's meeting. If you'd like to call in for public comment, the number is 888-475-4499. The meeting ID is 841-0422. 2631, and then please press pound. I ask that everyone silence or put on vibrate your electronic devices. Members will be using their laptops throughout the meeting. Please do not think that they are not paying attention. They will be following along with the meeting. And with that, we will get started and invite our GFO and team to the table. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. I'm Tiffany Greenmeyer, the Director for the Governor's Finance Office, and here with me today, to my left, is Craig Stevenson, and he is our Administrator for the Internal Audits Division. And then to my right, I have Deputy Director Curtis Palmer and Lisa Galloway, which is the ARPA Coordinator. Madam Chair, would you like me to pause after each budget?
Yes, please. Thank you.
So on slide 2 is the overview. Under the Governor's Finance Office, the governing responsibilities include the Budget Division, Special Appropriations, Internal Audits Division, Office of Federal Assistance, if that is approved in the 2025 session, and Core MV. Moving on to slide 3, this displays is the agenda items that we will be presenting today. Moving on to slide 4 is the organizational chart that represents the organizational structure. Moving on to slide 5. The Governor's Finance Office Budget Division is responsible for producing the Governor's recommended budget that meets the functional goals of the state of Nevada and missions of the missions of the individual state agencies. The division also provides fiscal guidance to state agency fiscal staff and responsible for budgetary oversight, ensuring that the departments are meeting the Governor's initiatives and legislative intent. The Budget Division's base budget includes 39 positions and associated operating costs, and that also includes the ARPA positions. E300 requests ongoing funding for Microsoft Office. E301 develops the transfer portal between NEBS and Basin to streamline the data between the two systems. For example, the Governor's recommended budget to the Legislative Council Bureau and the return of the legislatively approved budget, as well as work programs. E302 removes the overtime funding in year 1 of the biennium. Moving on to slide 6, Decision Unit E499 sunsets the ARPA funding, including 12 positions and associated costs. The ARPA funding will fund the positions through April of 2027. There is a budget amendment forthcoming, which revises the E599 decision unit and the request to continue 4 positions and some operating costs to continue through the biennium. E710 requests the replacement of computer hardware and associated software. And then moving on to slide 7. As mentioned in the prior slide, we will be submitting 2 budget amendments, with the first amendment correcting the projected amount of ARPA funding, which remains in fiscal year 2025, and balance the amount forward to fiscal year 2026 and 2027, with the intent to fund existing filled positions and corresponding operating costs through April of 2027, and continue funding for 4 positions through the rest of the biennium. The intent is to reallocate unused ARPA dollars to continue the administration of ARPA grant funds until all ARPA projects are closed. The unused portion is generated from projects near completion or completed under budget. The first budget amendment also requests to continue 1 executive branch officer 2, which manages a team of 2, and the assigned accounts. And this request supports 1 administrative service officer 4 position and 2 management analyst positions previously funded with ARPA, to focus on the implementation and management of SWICAP, AGCAP, cost allocation plans, and other statutory duties beginning July 1st, 2025, which is partially funded with general fund. The second budget amendment requests to fund the reclassification of the budget administrator to a deputy director. This reclass supports the need for a uniform management of state agency budgets within the Governor's Finance Office. The current tiered administration does not allow for equal distribution of responsibility with oversight of all executive budget officers and their assigned agencies. To date, 1 deputy director supervises both executive branch budget officer 3 positions, leaving less responsibility to the budget administrator and less access to administrative decisions for the agencies. Also, this budget amendment will eliminate the total overtime authority in the first year of the biennium, as a portion of this was left in year 1 in error. And with that, I will pause here for questions.
Thank you so much. We do have a few questions on 1340. Our agenda was a little different, so members, if you'll turn to page 37 of your highlights, and we have a few questions. We're going to start with Senator.
Yes. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I'm just trying to catch up here a little bit. I'm looking at, and it's my understanding that you have a proposed budget amendment that you're working on when it comes to this budget, and I appreciate that we're still working on that as we head towards closing. But I have a question about how many of the 12 positions that are currently funded by those ARPA funds, how many of them are currently filled?
Tiffany Greenmeyer for the record. We currently have 7 ARPA positions filled.
And I guess that leads me to the next question. As these ARPA funds are winding down, I recognize that there's a lot of maybe more work potentially in closing up some of these things, making sure that we're in compliance. How did you determine what the projected workload would be for this upcoming biennium as we're closing out these ARPA funds that would justify continuing these same 12 positions?
So we currently have 7 positions, and it was determined that 4 positions would be plenty to close out and finish monitoring the ARPA dollars. That's how we determined it. We looked at it and said, okay, 4 positions will probably be enough to go through and monitor and revise and close out the project.
So that would be the recommendation is to, in the amendment, is to come back with just those 4 positions.
That is correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Members, any other questions on? Majority Leader, looks like you have a question.
And maybe this is solved by the budget amendment. As it was presented to us, there's a request for these 12 to continue. But then you were just talking that maybe 4 would be enough. And so I'm just trying to reconcile that with your last answer.
Tiffany Greenmeyer for the record. Sorry, let me go back over that.
Okay.
7 positions are funded with ARPA through April of 2027 to close out the ARPA dollars, the ARPA projects, and then 4 of the positions will continue the last 2 months of the biennium. And that, the budget amendment corrects that.
And I think that might be a difference of some of the information that we have, because it appears that we had 9 of those positions were funded through April, and then 3 were funded through June of 27.
That would be correct, and then the budget amendment corrects the rest. Brings back in 7 positions to be funded through April of 2027, and then 4 of the positions will continue on through the end of the biennium.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess we'll wait to see the budget amendment.
And I have a question. When should we expect to receive that budget amendment?
Tiffany Greenmeyer for the record. I will have that budget amendment to you guys no later than Monday.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? All right, not seeing any. We'll close that one and move on.
Tiffany Greenmeyer for the record. Next budget is budget account 1301, which is special appropriations. And I do want to correct an error on this budget account. Civil Air Patrol is $25,000 in the first year only. So the special appropriations account is used for Governor's Finance Office to pass through general fund appropriations to other governmental entities and nonprofit organizations. And this, the governor's recommended budget is to continue funding the Holocaust education, $200,000 over the biennium. Nevada Volunteers is $300,000 over the biennium, and Civil Air Patrol would be $25,000 in the first year. And I'll pause for questions.
Thank you so much. We're going to go to Assembly Member Bacchus.
Ms. Greenmeyer, I just wanted to clarify, because I just wanted to make sure, you were talking about a change, but I was kind of switching my pages, and I just wanted to confirm. So you were saying that the Nevada Civil Air Patrol is going to be just $25,000 in that first fiscal year? Is that what you were saying?
Tiffany Greenmeyer for the record. Yes, that is correct. The Civil Air Patrol is funded $25,000 in the first year only.
Only. Okay, thank you for that
And
clarification.
it's just a correction on the slide.
Okay, thanks.
It seems like I had 3 people with the same question. They saw that the slide. So just to make sure that we are all on the same page, in FY27 for Civil Air Patrol, the total should be 0.
Tiffany Greenmeyer, for the record, that is correct.
Members, any other questions on 1301? All right, not seeing any, we will move on. Thank you.
Tiffany Greenmeyer, for the record. I will pass this on to Deputy Director Curtis Palmer.
And good morning, Chair and Committee. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning. I will cover Budget Account 1327, which begins on page 9 or slide 9 of the handout. And this is regarding the ARPA federal relief funds. The program is housed within Budget Account 1327 in the Office of the Governor and is managed by the Governor's Finance Office. The state of Nevada was awarded $2.7 billion in June of 2021. These funds must be completely expended by December 31st of 2026, with the exception of a few key staff, as mentioned, that are needed to close down the program. State fiscal recovery funds can be used for the following uses: lost revenue, of which we have 244 projects that fall into this category; public health and negative economic impacts, and we have 127 projects that fall into this category; investments in water, sewer, and broadband, and we have 2 projects that fall into this category. Not listed as one of the options on the slide, but is eligible as the administrative costs, and the recipients the state is able to use these funds for administrating the program, including the cost of consultants to support effective management and oversight, including consultation and ensuring compliance with legal, regulatory, and other requirements. There are 7 different notice of awards that fall under this category. And then to wrap this part up, the state of Nevada did not issue any awards for premium pay emergency relief from natural disaster surface transportation projects or Title I projects. On slide 10, at a very high level, the state appropriated funding for projects, for 380 projects in total. 162 of those are complete. 113 of those are 50% or more complete. 80% or 50%, 80 are 50% or less complete. 9 have not started, meaning that at this point they have not asked for any type of reimbursements from our records. And 16 projects were ultimately canceled. To date, we have spent a little over $1.5 billion of the funds that have been appropriated or were given to us in the program to the state. These reimbursement accounts amount does not include any advances that were given out to the recipients. On slide 11, from a program stance, there are 3 key points to keep in mind regarding these funds. The first, we have met with 100% of the funds being obligated per the U.S. Treasury rules, and that deadline was December 31st of 2024. We continue to monitor these projects and keep tabs on what is going on. The second item is that previously obligated funds can be reclassified from the original activity to another existing project that would be eligible under the program rules. And then the third is it is possible to move funding from an identified project that was previously financed with local funds, but which is eligible under the program to that would also meet the criteria of having been obligated as of December 31st of 2024. As stated recently in an IFC meeting, the state received $2.7 billion. We have not heard anything from the federal government that would indicate any intent to pull back any of those funds from the state. Our ARPA team continues to touch base with each project at least monthly. We anticipate that not all the funds will be spent, and that there may be an opportunity to adjust some of these funds to other projects. We're keeping a short list of those possible projects, and as funds become available, we will look at how we can move some of those funds around to ensure that they're completely spent. Should those funds become available, nothing can happen, of course, without the proper controls and mechanisms in place, including legislature IFC approvals. As funds do become available, we'll work with the governor's office and your fiscal staff to propose movements of those funds. So on slide 12, maybe stepping aside from the cold numbers of fiscal and data numbers and so forth, we wanted to highlight some of the success stories, and I would like to just give a quick brief covering of two of those projects. He Street Ministries, a total of 554 backpacks filled with school supplies were distributed to 299 low-income families. Additionally, 126,853 pounds of food, serving 4,318 children, adults and seniors, and the homeless, that were distributed through He Street Ministries, food purchases and distribution outreach programs in 23 and 24. And then the second one to highlight is the Nevada Rural Counties RSVP program. The Good Neighbor program develops structured volunteer training program to equip volunteers with skills to provide effective social support. The program has also had a profound impact on the lives of participating seniors, providing them with constant companionship and reducing feelings of isolation and loneliness. And there are many other such stories, and just highlight some of the work that we do as we try to distribute these funds and the technicalities and so forth, following all the rules. There is a human impact behind these projects, and very proud of the work that has been accomplished at this point through the many different hands that have been involved, including this body. And that completes the overview of Budget Account 1327, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. We do have a few questions, but I'd like to ask, going back to slide 10, there are 9 projects that were not started and 16 that were canceled. Could you just elaborate a little bit more on the 9 that weren't started? Do we know why, and what happened to those 16 that were canceled?
Thank you for the question. Curtis Palmer for the record. So, and again, when we say that they have not started, it is that they have not requested any reimbursements. There has been no movement from our side of things. Now, that doesn't mean that nothing has transpired. But we do have a list and budget amounts and so forth that we can provide to staff if you so desire. If you'd like me to read those names, I'd be happy to do so.
No, if you could provide that list to staff, they can distribute it to the members, that would be ideal.
Absolutely, we can do that. And if they had any questions, there are some of the members we invite, or some of those representatives from those projects that are here in the audience with us, so we could.
And the ones that were canceled, the 16 that were canceled, is that because they could not utilize the funds, they couldn't get contractors? Do we know why those were canceled?
Curtis Palmer for the record, thank you for the question. From just a quick look at it, it looks like most of them had decided that maybe the project wasn't feasible for them, or they weren't going to be able to accomplish what was set forth, and so they withdrew.
Perfect. And again, if you could supply that list to staff, that would be great. Okay. So we're going to go to Assemblymember Bacchus.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And my question pertains to the ARPA allocations that are in the executive budget. What we noticed was that there were several projects that are included in the executive budget, but then there are a few that had unexpended ARPA funds that weren't included in the budget. And so I can give you like one example, and I'm not sure if this is also falls with one of those that was not started, but the OSIT office for the broadband projects throughout the state. Last we knew, like in February, there was like $188.4 million but that didn't end up in the executive budget. So my question for you, probably Mr. Palmer, is can you explain the process taken by the GFO office in determining which programs funded with ARPA funds are accounted for within the executive budget for the 2025-27 biennium and which were not? Can you explain to us why that's happening?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. Curtis Palmer for the record. So the agency, the 26-27 with ARPA funded positions, the agency should have offset fiscal year 26 and 27 positions with costs with reserves and place all the award funding in 25 with the 26-27 positions cost balance by reserves and the other costs into a special use category in state fiscal year 25 that would be balanced forward. So the zero out of deck units E499 in most cases with the state end date of 12/31/26 unless sunsetted earlier will require non-IFC work programs to place these funds into reserves in 25. Fiscal year 25, the positions or programs would then continue funding with deck unit E599 to swap out the funding as used. 26-27 without ARPA positions, 100% of the authority is in 2025 or state fiscal year 25. If the authority is 100%, then there would be authority in 26-27 should be removed via E499 and balanced forward from each fiscal year. So that would show that the zero amount in 26 because the funds are being balanced forward from 25. And there are some budgets without ARPA positions that are 100% of the authority, not in fiscal year 25, but the authority is not 100% in, excuse me, the authority is not 100% in 25, only applies if they haven't brought in the entire amount from the previous year, fiscal year. So there may be some balancing forward from 24 into 25, but those funds are accounted for in 25, and it's anticipated those will roll forward into 26, 27 to continue those projects.
Madam Chair, may I have a follow-up? Also, I want to just clarify so I understand what you're saying, because I really enjoyed that E499. It's scratched my head a couple times, but I think I understand what you're saying is that when the funds from this biennium are being expended, the E499 that's showing up in our next biennium budget is a negative number, depleting the ARPA funds that have been used. But those projects that I gave an example, like the OSIT office for the broadband, because it hasn't been expended, we're not seeing it in the executive budget because the 100% still is remaining in this biennium is anticipated to roll over into the next biennium. Did I accurately state what you were telling me?
Well done.
Okay,
Curtis
thank
Palmer
you.
for the record.
And then I have a question.
Thank you.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure I understood it, and I appreciate that. But would the office, GFO's office, have concerns if adjustments were made to account for projected expenditures in the legislatively approved budget for 2025-27 biennium for the large-scale projects that currently have no recommended authority? So those where the 100% lied, it's still in the last biennium, if we start addressing those in the current biennium?
Tiffany Greenmeyer for the record. Yes, the GFO office would be fine with putting the authority in the 26-27 ledge-approved budget.
Majority Leader?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to go back to a little bit of the discussion on the programs that had been canceled. Those that have been canceled, when were those decisions made to cancel those programs? Only because we were in here in December for IFC, right, to ensure that all of those funds were being obligated to programs that we believed were going to move forward and meet that expenditure deadline. So at what point between December and February, I think the information as of February 25th, 2025, when was that decision made about 16 projects being canceled?
Thank you for the question, Curtis Palmer for the record. So those projects were pretty much canceled from the beginning of they didn't even get off the ground. There was no activity and were removed shortly after they were implemented. There has been nothing that has been removed recently.
So is that just generally from us first allocating funds, and so those projects were canceled, and those funds have now been reallocated to other projects? Or is that a decision of projects that have been canceled since we've gotten to this obligation deadline of December 31st, 2024?
Thank you again for the question, Curtis Palmer, for the record. Nothing has been canceled recently. This is all kind of in that first round of things as we were getting the program off and running, and maybe some folks were a little ambitious and requested funds, and then realized later that it probably wasn't something they would be able to pull off. So these are all older.
So when we get the data from you all on these different projects that you've outlined, those 16 canceled projects should be things that we've already been made aware of, that we have already then de-obligated those funds from those projects and put them towards another usable project that is now underway and being utilized.
Curtis Palmer, for the record, that is correct.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Of course. Chair Dondero-Loop.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So I have a couple questions that I need some further information on. Can you explain how the Governor's Finance Office determined which positions that are currently funded with ARPA funds should be recommended to be continued with that alternative funding source?
Tiffany Graymire for the record. So the alternative funding source with the general fund to continue on with the ASO4 and the management analyst positions was determined because of the issues with the SWI cap and the ag cap and the prison population contract, as it was, wasn't developed during GovRec, and my thought was to bring those people in to be able to make sure that those cost allocation plans are complete for the budget, and making sure that we have the prison population contract completed and the report completed, and also the P&P staffing projections needed that are required to build the budget.
So how many positions statewide are currently funded in fiscal year 2025 with ARPA funds? And of those, how many of those positions are currently filled?
Thank you for the question, Curtis Palmer, for the record. It looks like we have 60 positions that would be that are being requested to move forward into the next biennium and continue. That's 60.
So
60.
yes, but how many of those are currently filled? And how many are currently funded, and how many are currently filled?
Tiffany Graymire for the record. Was that statewide that you were asking? Oh.
Yes.
Tiffany Graymire for the record. We're going to have to get back to you on that to make sure we know exactly how many are filled to date.
Do you know how many are currently funded? Is that the 60? That's not the 60.
Tiffany Graymire for the record, there are currently 60 positions that are funded with ARPA dollars, statewide.
Okay, so there's currently 60 funded statewide in fiscal year 2025, and you will get back to us on how many of those are filled. Do you have a guess?
That's correct.
Do you have a guess even? Is it 40, or is it 10, or is it 59?
Tiffany Greenmeyer for the record. If I had to guess, I would say probably majority of them are filled by now, since we are down to, the statewide is down to 12.82% filled. Vacancy. So I would imagine the majority of them are filled currently. But I
Okay.
will get you the exact number.
That would be great. Thank you very much, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. The funds had to be obligated by December of 2024, but there may be some potential savings and ability to reallocate funds. Is your office working with the award recipients to identify any potential savings from the previously approved ARPA dollars?
Thank you, Chair, for the question. Curtis Palmer for the record. Yes, the ARPA team meets with each project awardee, I guess, monthly to get a status report on how they're doing, what progress they're being made, and to ensure that we answer any questions that they may have and help make sure that there's nothing that, from at least our viewpoint or standpoint, that would block or hinder the project from moving forward and touching base with them. So we are monitoring all of the projects and keeping tabs on the progress they're making and so forth. We're also making a short list of those that we think might be needing a little extra push and working with the governor's office and our director to help with those, as well as keeping in mind there may be some funds that come back. With all good intentions, a project may end early under budget, or other things may happen that some of those funds may come back to us, and trying to be cognizant of what we could do to help ensure that those funds that come back would be spent timely on existing projects. So,
Thank you for that. And in those conversations, have you identified any of the previously awarded projects that may have some savings? And then, considering that we may have some savings, have you thought about how we reallocate those savings under what's allowable in the U.S. Department of Treasury's guidelines?
thank you for that, Curtis Palmer for the record. Yes, we are trying to monitor the projects and keep a short list. Of course, the agencies are, at this point at least, continuing to say that they will be spending the funds. And so until those funds are actually identified, there's not a lot that we can do as far as that movement goes. But we are keeping a short list, at least conversations between Ms. Galloway and myself for what might be possibilities should things come available, so that we have some options and can move quickly.
The mic's not liking me today. To make sure I understand correctly, so you already have a list of some that you think might not, we may have some savings. Do you have a list, also a specific list of projects that could utilize those savings that are like-minded projects that fall within? Do you have that list?
Thank you, Curtis Palmer for the record. Yes, we have that internally, just amongst ourselves, kind of just a notepad kind of list sort of thing. We haven't really taken any official action or any discussion further than just monitoring and having possibilities.
You're going to hate me for this, but I'd love to see that list as well. All right. Members, any other questions? Senator Nguyen?
Sorry. Didn't give me a lot of comfort to know there's a notepad list. I appreciate that there's a list. And I too would like to, I think all the committee members would like to do that. Do you have any kind of internal timeline that you have set to make sure that we can reclassify these unspent funds? Like, is there some sort of procedure, like we're looking at the $188 million with OSED, like as an example. Is there any point where you're like, okay, this is not going to be spent? We waited too long. It's not going to be spent. We need to get this into other projects that are in there. Do you have like some sort of internal timeline that you guys are utilizing to make sure that we don't lose out on these funds? And you know that there are a lot of funds where we've now had to shift to general funds in order to cover some of these ARPA positions that we believe should continue on. So are there any things, I'm thinking mostly a lot of these IT projects and some of these other things that I think would benefit from this. So do you have a timeline or deadlines that you know you want to get this money out the door? Like, hey, this is not going to happen and we're going to move on and try to reclassify these?
Tiffany Greenmeyer for the record. Yes, I believe there should be a deadline. I would like to make that deadline, by July 1st. That gives them a whole fiscal year, a year and a half to make sure projects get completed. And it allows us plenty of time to, if we have to switch the money into to different projects, then we can. So, I'd like to make sure that we are solid by July 1st of 2025 on all the projects that are going to, have money come back in, because we do need time to allocate the projects and make sure they're able to spend them. So I will be monitoring that, and it'll be really strict, right? Are you going to spend the money? Are you not going to spend the money? And we need to move on, because we do need to spend all this money.
May I follow up, Chair? I'm glad to hear that. I know that when we had, the December 31st, 2025 date, it was a date. And this one is obviously a little bit more arbitrary. And I think it's something that I'm glad to hear that you have internally a July 1st date. And I look forward to any, proposals for those reclassifications. And that kind of brings me back to the FAQ document that the federal government has kind of released as far as guidance in reallocating those funds. Do you have any indication on the timeline to get approval to reclassify those funds if we are not able to utilize them? So I hate to keep going back to that broadband like OSIT money, but do you have any idea how long that will take? So I guess my concern is you determine on July 1st that this isn't going to be able to go forward. You realize that you now have to make whatever this application is, or request or waiver or approval from the federal government. Do you have any idea how long that will take in order to later reclassify that money and bring it back to IFC and say, hey, this is what we want to do with it now?
That's an excellent question. Thank you. Curtis Palmer for the record. There is no federal government involvement in those decisions. It is all within the state at this point, so it's really just a matter of coming before the IFC to get those monies reallocated. And just a little clarification, when I mentioned the notepad list, there are a lot of projects that are currently in play that could accept more money. And so that the casual answer of just a list on a notepad is really just projects that are already in play that could accept additional funds if we needed to.
No, and I was, I have a napkin in my purse right now with a list, so it's okay. I just would like to see if there's any plans to more formalize, what our contingency plan is for these funds to make sure that we further don't lose them. So thank you.
Members, any other questions? I think it's important to all of us that we don't send any money back to the state. We made provisions to make sure we did that. So it's important for all of us to know if something's not going to happen, so we can get that money working elsewhere in the state. We're not sending any money back to DC. All right. Seeing no other questions, we will move on to the next budget. Thank you.
Tiffany Greenmeyer for the record. Next, we'll have Greg Stevenson go over the internal audits budget.
Members, that would be 1342, page 41.
Good morning, committee members. For the record, Craig Stevenson, Administrator of the Division of Internal Audits. Budget account 1342 begins on slide 13. The Division of Internal Audits supports state leaders and managers by auditing agencies and offering recommendations that enhance operational efficiency and effectiveness. The division provides internal controls training to agency staff, reports the results of a biennial review of agencies' internal controls to the governor and to the legislature, and performs follow-up audits for the legislative auditor. Audit recommendations help agencies better serve the public and safeguard state resources by improving management and outcomes and preventing and detecting fraud, waste, and abuse. Budget Account 1342's base funding and decision units E302 and E331 are shown on slide 13. Decision Unit E302, which originally requested one additional auditor position, will be removed via budget amendment because we are losing an auditor to retirement in March and we're having trouble filling current vacancies. Additionally, we anticipate a small reduction in workload if legislation passes creating an Office of the Inspector General. Assembly Bill 33 transfers the requirement to manage a fraud, waste, and abuse hotline from the Division of Internal Audits to the Office of the Inspector General, if passed. Decision Unit E331 requests funding for expenses associated with teammate audit software. These expenses will be paid using ARPA funds. Therefore, a budget amendment eliminating this request is forthcoming. Continuing to slide 14, please. Decision Units E499 and E599 sunset ARPA funding and the associated position and continue funding for one classified position and associated expenses. This position is already filled, but it is ARPA funded. Therefore, we are requesting funding beginning July 1st, 2025 to retain the current highly qualified state employee. Decision Unit E680 was intended to remove duplicative base funding for one administrative assistant position. However, an enhancement unit was the incorrect method of accomplishing this. A budget amendment correcting this mistake is forthcoming. Decision Unit E710 requests funding for replacement computer hardware and software. Next slide, please. Slide 15 summarizes the division's forthcoming budget amendments. Next slide. Slide 16 shows the division's performance measures. Our performance is primarily measured through our first performance measure, which is the identified dollar benefits for each dollar spent on internal audit. In fiscal year 2024, the division returned $90 in value to the state for every dollar invested in internal audit. Additionally, I am pleased to report that nearly 95% of internal audit recommendations were implemented in fiscal year 2024, which is a record high for us. This concludes our presentation. We'd be happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
Thank you so much. We do have a few questions. We're going to go to Assemblymember Mosca.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for that presentation. I know that you did say, you confirmed that there will be a budget amendment to remove Decision Unit E302 because of the retirement, but wanted to know in the difficulty filling the position. So what's going to happen with the workload for if you can't fill that position?
Thank you for the question, Craig Stevenson. For the record, part of that the workload that was intended for that position will be partially covered by the ARPA position that we're converting to general fund. So that's an audit manager position, and that position is going to take on a little bit more responsibility. So that really removes the need for an auditor 3 because we simply cannot fill the positions currently. We're already requesting a new audit manager, and we want them to take on that load. Additionally, some of the load will be redistributed. For one, if the fraud, waste, and abuse hotline goes away, that's about, I would estimate, maybe 5 or 6 hours of work a week, so maybe less than a fifth of an FTE. And so that would be redistributed, and so we'd have a little bit more time. But that's really why we no longer need that position, but we do want to retain the audit manager position that's currently ARPA funded.
Thank you. And next up, we have Assemblywoman Brown-May.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. There are a lot of budget adjustments, so if you don't mind, just to clarify, this is on Decision Unit E499 and E599, which is that Executive Branch Auditor 4 position, right? It looks like we're recommending to eliminate ARPA funds but add general fund appropriation. Are we expecting a budget amendment relative to that position as well?
Yes, ma'am. Craig Stevenson for the record.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? All right, not seeing any. Maybe everyone's tired. It's been a long week. Well, thank you. Believe that covers everything we had on our agenda for today. Don't let anyone know that we got out of here in less than an hour. All right. Thank you so much for being with us. We look forward to all those budget amendments and all the lists to be sent over. And with that, that brings us to the last item on our agenda, which is public comment. If you are here in Carson City and you'd like to make public comment, I invite you to the table, fill in all the seats. If we had 2 people in Las Vegas, we have lost them both. So I don't think we'll have any public comment from Las Vegas. And if you're joining us on the phone line, you'd like to make public comment, again, our number is 888-475-4499. The meeting ID is 841-0422-2631, and then please press pound. Not seeing anyone here in Carson City for public comment and no one at our table in Las Vegas. Do we have anyone joining us on the phone line that would like to make public comment at this time?
Chair, the public line is open and working, but there are no callers at this time.
Well, it looks like everyone's a little tired. So with that, members, our meeting is adjourned. I wish you all a very happy weekend. I'll see you all on Monday morning.